Welcome to Neville Manifestation, a space where we explore the quiet power of the mind and the simple shifts that can completely transform your reality. If you feel called to go deeper into this journey, consider joining our membership, where you'll get exclusive insights, guided practices, and a closer connection to these teachings that can truly reshape the way you experience your life. What if the reason nothing is changing in your life isn't because you're doing too little, but because you're trying too hard? What if every time you chase what you want with intensity, you're quietly reminding your mind that it's still out of reach? And what if the real shift doesn't come from effort or emotion at all, but from something so subtle, so ordinary, you've been overlooking it your entire life? Because the moment something feels normal to you is the moment it begins to become real. What you're hearing in that script is pointing toward a very subtle but extremely powerful shift in how the mind accepts identity. The reason that dullness works is because it slips past resistance. When a thought feels dramatic, exciting, or emotionally charged, your mind treats it like a foreign object. It stands out, it demands attention, and anything that demands attention automatically gets evaluated. Is this true? Is this really me? That's where the internal friction begins. But when a thought is ordinary, almost boring, it doesn't trigger that same level of scrutiny. Think about how you experience things that are already true in your life. You don't wake up and emotionally affirm your name. You don't visualize owning your phone. You don't feel excitement about having a place to live, most days. These things feel neutral, flat, obvious. That neutrality is not a lack of belief, it's actually the highest form of acceptance. So when she casually thinks, I own my business, without intensity, without trying to convince herself, she's matching the emotional tone of something that is already integrated into identity. That's why it lands. The mind's gatekeeper, you can think of it as your self-concept filter, is always asking, does this feel like me? Not, do I want this? Not, am I excited about this? But, is this familiar enough to be true? Excitement often signals distance. Calmness signals ownership. That's why people who try very hard, affirming loudly, visualizing intensely, chasing feelings, often feel like they're making progress, but nothing sticks. They're reinforcing the idea that the desire is separate from them. On the other hand, when something becomes mundane in your inner world, it stops being a goal and starts being a given. And once your mind accepts something as a given, it begins to reorganize your perception, decisions, and behavior around it automatically. You don't force action. You don't chase opportunities. You simply start moving like the person for whom this is already normal. That's the hidden shift. It's quiet, almost invisible. There's no big emotional peak, no cinematic moment, no sense of this is it. In fact, it often feels like nothing happened. But internally, something very precise has changed. You stopped wanting and started being. And from that point forward, reality isn't something you're trying to reach, it's something that begins to catch up with you. When I say dull, I'm not talking about something boring in a negative way. I'm talking about something that carries no resistance, no tension, no emotional spikes. It's simply the feeling of something being normal. And normal is exactly what your mind accepts without questioning. Let me help you feel this more clearly. Look at the ordinary things in your life that you never think twice about. Not the exciting stuff, the simple everyday things. Your fridge quietly running, water coming out the moment you turn the tap, your phone connecting to the internet without effort, your keys being exactly where you left them, the sun rising tomorrow morning, the light turning on when you flip the switch. Now notice how you relate to these things. You don't try to believe in them. You don't repeat affirmations about them. You don't visualize your fridge working properly. You don't sit down and try to feel emotionally aligned with your kettle boiling. You don't stand there convincing yourself the light will turn on. You just know. And that knowing is so calm, so natural, that you don't even notice it's there. It's not loud, it's not emotional, it's just a quiet certainty that sits in the background of your life. That's what I mean by dull. These things are so deeply accepted that they require zero effort from you. They are part of the structure of your reality. You're not trying to manifest them. You're simply living in a world where they are already true. And here's the key insight. That same quiet, steady, almost unnoticed feeling is the exact state where manifestation actually happens. What you want doesn't come to you when you're excited about it. It doesn't arrive because you're visualizing with intensity or repeating affirmations with force. It becomes real when it's absorbed into your life the same way those ordinary things are. When it becomes something you no longer question. When it joins the background of your identity. When it becomes just another, of course. At that point, there's no resistance left. Your mind isn't pushing back. Your body isn't tense. There's no inner argument happening. And when that resistance disappears, your external reality is free to shift. Nothing has to fight its way in anymore. It simply moves into place. That's why the people who seem the most relaxed about their desires are often the ones who receive the fastest. They're not doing anything dramatic. They're just holding their desires in the same calm, settled way they hold everything else that's already true in their life. Now let's make this practical, because this is where most people get it wrong. You can't fake ordinariness. You can't act it out or perform it. It's not about pretending. It's about the tone you carry inside. Start by noticing how you currently talk to yourself about what you want. There's usually a certain emotional charge in it, a sense of longing, maybe urgency, maybe a quiet pressure underneath the words. It sounds like, I really want this, I need this, why isn't it here yet? I hope it comes soon. That tone alone is enough to keep it away, because that tone carries the feeling of not having it. Your mind doesn't just listen to your words, it responds to the feeling behind them. And if the feeling says, this is missing, then that's the reality it continues to hold. So now, try something different. Say the same desire internally, but change the tone completely. Make it quieter, flatter, more casual. Say it the way you would say, the trash goes out on Thursday. Yes, I run my own business. Yes, we live there now. Yes, that's just how things are. No excitement, no effort, no trying to convince yourself. Just a simple statement. And then notice what happens. The tension drops. The neediness softens. The distance between you and the desire starts to shrink. You're no longer reaching for it, you're speaking from it. And that shift is everything. Because now your mind doesn't see it as something new or unrealistic. It sounds familiar, it sounds normal. And because of that, it stops resisting. That's the entire mechanism. The words themselves don't need to change much. The tone does. It has to match the tone of things that are already true in your life. Calm, neutral, obvious. Here's a simple way to feel it in your body. Say to yourself, the sun will rise tomorrow. Notice how that sounds internally. There's no emotion behind it, no urgency, just a quiet knowing. Now take that exact same tone and apply it to your desire. My work is going well. I have more than enough money. I'm with the person I love. My body feels strong and healthy. Say it in the same calm way. Don't push it. Don't decorate it. Don't turn it into something big. Just let it be a simple fact. If you're doing it right, you'll feel a small shift inside, a kind of settling, a slight release, like something just clicked into place without effort. That's the moment your mind accepts it. That's the assumption slipping in without resistance. You don't need to sit for hours doing this. You don't need long sessions or intense focus. Just a few times during the day, while you're making tea, walking, standing in line, quietly return to that tone. State it simply, then move on. No performance, no pressure. Over time, this changes something deep inside you. Your identity adjusts. And as that internal structure shifts, your external world starts to follow. So here's something simple you can do starting today. For one full day, just observe how you speak to yourself about what you want. Pay attention to the tone, the emotional charge, the subtle urgency. Because once you hear it clearly, you'll understand exactly why things haven't been settling in and how to change that. Whenever you think about something you want, pay attention to how it feels in your body and mind. Notice the urgency, the tension, the subtle gripping. Just observing this starts to shift it, because the moment you're aware of a state, you're no longer fully inside it. You've stepped slightly outside, and that creates space. Once you can clearly recognize that feeling, you can begin to change it. Throughout your day, in normal, in-between moments, practice stating your desire in a calm, ordinary way. Not during some intense ritual or dedicated session. Do it while you're doing simple things, standing in line, making tea, walking somewhere. Quietly, in the same tone you'd use to think, it might rain later. Just acknowledge the life you're choosing as if it's already a fact. Something like, yeah, my work is going really well now. My body feels good. We live there now. Of course. Keep it short, keep it soft, then move on. It should take just a few seconds. Do it a handful of times a day, that's enough. Another important shift: stop putting your desire on a pedestal. When you catch yourself getting excited about it, imagining the big moment when it finally happens, or building anticipation, pause. Don't suppress the feeling, just step back and recognize what it is. Excitement often comes from distance. It carries the sense that what you want is still separate from you. What you're aiming for instead is a feeling of normalcy. So gently bring the desire back down. Let it sit among the ordinary facts of your life. Let it become something unremarkable, something that doesn't demand attention. That's where the real change happens. Before you go to sleep, use that quiet moment when your mind is most open. Right before drifting off, casually settle into the idea that your desired life is already your reality. Don't try to feel anything intense. Don't visualize in detail. Just rest in it the way you would any simple truth. Let that be the last thing your awareness touches as you fall asleep. Your deeper mind takes that as instruction and continues working with it. Then comes the hardest part: trusting this simple, almost boring process. It won't feel like anything is happening. That's actually a good sign. If it felt dramatic, it would mean you're still treating it like something distant. The quiet, flat, uneventful nature of this practice is exactly what allows it to work. That's how assumptions settle in. That's how your internal structure begins to shift without resistance. All of this is subtle, small adjustments, nothing flashy, and that's the point. There's also something else that comes with this approach, something people don't expect. When your desires stop feeling intense and start feeling ordinary, a kind of freedom appears. When a desire is exciting, it often carries a low level discomfort. Every time you think about it, there's a reminder that it isn't here yet, a sense of reaching, a quiet tension. But when that desire becomes neutral, when it feels like something that simply is, that tension disappears. You can think about it without any strain. You can carry it through your day without it pulling at you. It stops asking anything from you. It becomes restful. You're no longer stuck in wanting. You're settled in knowing. And knowing doesn't hurt. While you're in that state, something interesting happens. Your attention returns to your actual life, the moment you're in right now, the small details, the simple experiences. You're no longer mentally leaning into a future that hasn't arrived. And in that grounded present state, you naturally begin to live like someone who already has what they want. From there, things begin to shift on their own, not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly and steadily. At some point, you'll look around and realize that what you once wanted has become part of your life. And it won't feel shocking or overwhelming. It will feel familiar, almost like it had already been true for a while. That's how these things tend to arrive, quietly, without spectacle, blending into the ordinary flow of your life. So tonight and in the days ahead, do something very simple. Turn your attention to what you want, and instead of reaching for it or trying to energize it, just acknowledge it as a normal part of your reality. Like you would acknowledge the sun rising, like water boiling, like your keys being where you left them. Just a simple inner response. Yeah, that's how it is. Then go on with your day. Let it be easy. Let it be unremarkable. Let it settle. And as much as you can, stay present with your life as it is now. Not because your desires don't matter, but because they've already been placed in the category of things that are simply true. They don't need your effort anymore, only your quiet acceptance. Make it ordinary and allow it to show up in its own time. That's the practice, that's the shift, and that's where everything begins to change. What makes this approach so interesting is that it's less about getting something and more about changing the way your mind relates to reality itself. Most people are used to interacting with their desires from a place of distance. There's always a subtle gap. I want this, but I don't have it yet. Even when they try to be positive, that gap is still there underneath. This method removes the gap by changing the tone, not the content. Your mind doesn't really respond to the words you say as much as it responds to the state those words are spoken from. You can repeat the same sentence, I'm successful, for example. But if it's charged with effort, longing, or hope, the deeper part of your mind reads that as, this is not true yet. That's why repetition alone often doesn't work. But when the same idea is held in a calm, neutral, almost indifferent way, it carries a completely different signal. It feels like something already integrated, something already accepted, and the mind doesn't argue with what feels normal. This is why the ordinary tone matters so much. It mimics the way you relate to everything that's already part of your identity. You don't try to believe those things. You don't reinforce them. You don't get emotional about them. They're just there, sitting quietly in the background. When you start placing your desires into that same background space, they stop being desires in the usual sense. They become assumptions. And assumptions are powerful because they operate automatically. They influence how you interpret situations, what you notice, what you ignore, how you respond, and even what opportunities you recognize. It's not about forcing change, it's about becoming someone for whom different outcomes feel natural. Another subtle piece of this is how it changes your relationship with time. When you're in a state of wanting, time feels slow. You're always aware of how long something is taking. You check for progress, you look for signs, you measure. That constant checking actually reinforces the idea that the thing isn't here yet. But when something feels ordinary, when it feels like a settled fact, you stop tracking it. You don't wonder when your phone will arrive if it's already in your pocket. In the same way, when your desire feels internalized, your attention naturally shifts away from when will it happen to just living. And that shift removes a huge amount of pressure. There's also a behavioral layer to this, even if it doesn't feel like effort. When something feels normal to you, you start making choices that align with it without thinking. You speak differently, you carry yourself differently, you respond to situations with a different baseline assumption. It's not forced action, it's congruent action. For example, someone who casually assumes their work is going well doesn't approach opportunities with hesitation or doubt. They don't overthink every move. They operate from a quiet expectation that things tend to work out. That alone changes outcomes over time. Another important detail is consistency without intensity. This practice works not because you do it with strong emotion, but because you do it lightly and repeatedly. It's like placing something gently into your mind over and over until it settles there. If you try to do too much, too many repetitions, too much focus, too much effort, you bring back that sense of strain. And strain signals that something is being forced. What you're aiming for instead is frequency without pressure. A few seconds at a time, a few times a day, in a tone that feels almost forgettable. It's also worth noticing how this affects your emotional baseline. When you're no longer constantly reaching for something, your system relaxes. There's less internal conflict, less comparison, less background dissatisfaction. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means the caring is no longer tense. And from that relaxed state, you're actually more present, more aware, and more responsive to what's happening around you. Ironically, that often makes you more effective in the real practical sense. There's a kind of quiet confidence that builds from this. Not the loud, performative kind, but something steady. You don't feel the need to prove anything or chase anything. There's just an underlying sense that things are unfolding as they should. Over time, this becomes your default way of relating to things. Not just one specific desire, but everything. You begin to notice when you're slipping into urgency or attachment, and you naturally soften it. And that might be the deeper value of this whole approach. It's not only about outcomes, it's about how you experience your life while those outcomes are unfolding. Instead of spending your days in a subtle state of not yet, you spend them in a state of quiet sufficiency. You're still moving forward, still creating, still choosing, but you're doing it from a place that feels complete rather than lacking. And that shift, more than anything, is what changes both your inner experience and the results that follow. And in the end, what truly changes everything is not the intensity of your effort, not the force of your desire, and not the amount of time you spend trying to make something happen, but the quiet moment when you stop chasing and start accepting. The moment you no longer treat your dreams as something distant, something special, something out there, and instead allow them to settle into your mind as something simple, something ordinary, something that just is. Because the truth is, your life does not transform through pressure, it transforms through permission. When you remove the urgency, the struggle, and the constant need for proof, you create space for a new identity to take root. One that doesn't question, doesn't doubt, and doesn't reach, but simply exists in quiet certainty. And from that place, everything begins to align in ways that feel natural rather than forced, gradual rather than sudden, but undeniable over time. You stop measuring, stop waiting, stop asking when, because at some level you already know. And that knowing changes how you move, how you think, how you respond to the world, without you even realizing it. The opportunities you once searched for begin to meet you. The confidence you tried to build begins to feel effortless. and the life you imagine starts to feel familiar long before it fully appears. That is the real shift, not a dramatic breakthrough, but a silent decision to treat what you desire as something that belongs to you already. So, as you leave this idea behind and return to your everyday life, don't try to do more, don't try to feel more, and don't try to force anything into place. Just carry this one understanding with you. The more ordinary it feels, the more real it becomes. Let it be simple, let it be quiet, let it be normal. And in that normalcy, in that calm and unremarkable acceptance, you will find the very thing you've been searching for. Not as something you finally reached, but as something that was slowly becoming yours all along.